Thank you. I'll read the same as I did before. Whereas Article 3 of the Community Accord between City of Pell River and Tla'amin Nation suggests working groups as a way to maintain relationship between City of Pell River and Tla'amin Nation. And whereas working groups work together on issues of mutual interest and make recommendations to and seek direction from members' respective councils as they carry out the work. I'll also reiterate all of the other whereas clauses I made in the previous motion. And I'm going to update the wording again because we're at committee. I move that the committee recommend that council appoints councillors Almeida, Doubt, and Isaacson to an intergovernmental protocol working group intended to gather regularly with elected representatives from Tla'amin Nation with an initial purpose to develop a terms of reference for such a working group, including working on recommendations to update community accord protocols to be brought back to council for deliberation and potential adoption. And if there's a seconder, I'll explain a little bit about this.
Seconded by Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. This just goes a little bit further. I think there are many reasons that we would be meeting about things in C3, but sometimes it's helpful to work things out in a small group and not to make decisions for council, but to work on things to bring back to our councils. Again, council meetings are where decisions get made, so decisions don't get made at working groups. Again, this is to reiterate that while staff have working relationships at the political level, we also need to find a path forward. And so sometimes it just helps to have a, rather than waiting for full meetings of council where we can be all 7 together, that we can roll up our shirt sleeves, test out possibilities with each other, and come back to our respective bodies to have discussions and decisions. So this motion doesn't outline where this working group might go to. It's very clear that the first job of a working group, our position, again, because we can only speak for our council if this moves forward, that our position would be the first task would be to develop a terms of reference to make it clear how those meetings operate, how they're communicated, how they are held and where and for what purpose. The only thing that this motion is specific about is related to working on recommendations to update community accord protocols. I was reviewing the protocol, what is it called? I'm missing it now. Our protocol agreement outlines different working groups that should exist and how often they should meet, and those are not happening right now. And so we definitely need those to get a review. But otherwise, this motion is vague on purposes, but having a working group get together and test ideas with Tla'amin Nation, have a bit of a back and forth, and then based on what might be possible, bringing that back to council and for discussion and decision making as would normally happen. So this is a way for us to move things forward at a political level, perhaps in a way that's a little bit more expedient, but again, always coming back to council for decision. This is a working group. It's not quorum. It would not have authority to make any decisions, but it would be able to deliberate, brainstorm, and come back to our respective bodies with recommendations. I named 3 people in the motion. Councillor Almeida, you were out of the room briefly, but I named Councillors Almeida, Doubt, and myself. I think in putting names forward, I want to perhaps, for example, with Councillor Almeida being newer to council, help build stronger relationships for people for whom these are newer, having a bit of experience with a joint working group, and Councillor Dowd is always quite his knowledge on protocol runs deep, and so would appreciate his perspectives. And I interested in hearing the conversation and seeing if we can pass this motion to refer it to council for decision.
Again, I'd like to remind us that this is committee, so we are in discussion and asking questions at this point, and we can debate both the tenets of this motion and also the three names that Councillor Isaacson put forward at council. Mayor, and then Councillor Dowd, and then Councillor Palm.
Thank you. I have a question for both Councillor Isaacson and for our CAO. So maybe in response, if Councillor Isaac can go first and then followed by the CEO. The question is, have you had any discussion with elected or unelected officials of the Kalama Nation with regard to this proposal and how it sat with them?
Yeah, I did reach out to Haggis John Hackett because putting forward something that Kalama Nation would not support is kind of moot. So I reached out with a vague idea of what I thought could be possible. I heard his perspectives, but he didn't see the final motion and was not aware of the names that I named tonight.
Did the CEO have any discussions with her counterpart?
Through the chair, to your worship and council, not relating to this. Sorry. Thank you.
The other question was with regard to respectful protocol. If we knew whether or not the Haggis would be sitting on this committee if it went forward, then it would be appropriate for the mayor to also sit on it to show respect in terms of the composition of the board. So we'll leave that for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is a reasonable motion. We need to, at some point, get together, in my view, and get the C3 meetings going. And in order to do that, I think it would be reasonable to sit down together in a small group and work out some terms of reference, some protocol agreements about how we can schedule the meetings, how we can work it out, maybe some discussion around how we can go into closed meetings if we decide to have those. And with thanks to the suggestion, I would be willing to serve on that committee. And I'm running into the shortness of time here, so I just wanted to get my point of view across before I have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowd. Councillor Palm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just clarification on the motion that is on the floor. I have one motion on my screen. Councillor Isaacson, did you make an amendment? Did you want to make an amendment to the motion that's on my screen?
I just made through the chair. I clarified that this is a committee, so I said that committee recommends that council. So we're not at a council meeting, so I did that, and then I specified the 3 members. So it mentions 3 members, and I just I threw those out there as a starting point for discussion. And so those were the 2 small changes, but the rest of the language is the same.
So my question is, do you want to make an amendment?
I've made a motion, so
you included those 3 names?
yeah, I included those 3 names in the motion. Yeah.
Oh, interesting that we're asking for 3 members of council, which is not quorum, meet, and I guess I'm assuming that these meetings, are they open to the public?
They're not meetings, so they don't need to be, no. Not meetings as in they're not council meetings. Meetings are defined in sections 89 and 90. They're not a meeting, they're not quorum.
I think it would be important to the public to know whether they're behind closed doors or open meetings you're proposing.
They're private, they're not open.
Maybe I'll
I
address,
didn't.
address this, if I may,
Sorry,
Councillor Isaacson. A working group is a working group. So it is something that basically does work to bring back to council for discussion that then would be in open meeting.
So I'm just going to follow up my previous statements earlier, and that was, in my opinion, what came out of our working group was not in the best interest of all of our citizens that we're sitting up here to represent. I'll just leave it at that for this point. And I would also second the mayor's comment that if Chief Haggis is on the committee, that our mayor should also be on committee. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I do think this is a very timely motion. I feel like it, proposes a way we can move forward given the situation we're in at the moment. And moving forward in a good way is really, really important to the relationship between our city and Common. I think that hindering the ability for us to move forward hasn't been working so far. So we need to do something different. And the way the work of the previous working group is being portrayed is not accurate, in my opinion. There were no decisions made by that working group. Everything was put forward back to council in a report with recommendations, and those recommendations are for us to deliberate and decide about here with everybody involved. I did find that the working group that I participated in was a good way to do really hard work. I don't think protocol heavy formal meetings are necessarily the best way to get all your work done. So refining recommendations that are coming forward from a working group is a different kind of thing than having a council meeting. And so it is a good way to do work. I think we get to see everything they talk about come back to us. If they think it has merit, they'll come back to us with some recommendations that we can then deliberate through our formal process. And that's a perfectly legitimate way to carry out government. We're a very small community, so we're not really, haven't had a lot of opportunities to get really complex stuff done, such as they do with other levels of government. So the provincial government has negotiated entire treaties where the wording comes back to government and has an official process, but not the negotiations and all the discussions are not open. They're handled through years and years and meetings to get to a place where we think we have something we can forward for decision. And it's not really possible to do all of those discussions in a formal way. It just gets in the way of getting anything done. So I think this is a really good proposal. I think working together is the point, and having a working group does that. And we don't need to worry about what might happen in that working group because decisions are not made there, they're made here at council. So I support moving forward with this to council.
Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, I wanted to address Mayor's question or comment about, if Haggis will be on this committee. I don't know who Tla'amin Nation would send to such a committee. I think you, Mayor, as spokesperson of council and of the community, you have an existing formal intergovernmental role that you can play, for example, with RD Chair Clay Brander and Haggis John Hackett, and those that remains true. This is a specific way to move forward with a couple of members of council to again explore some ideas and bring anything back to council to deliberate, but it doesn't take away from your existing role as spokesperson for council and as mayor and as elected head of this government.
Councillor Palm.
I'll just add that any committee that struck in this regard, so many key important issues on the table should have the mayor present at any discussion at this level. And I think he's on the right track in that regard. And secondly, I just have to say, during your discussions on the first item, which was D3 forums, there would be no need for item 7.2, Intergovernmental Protocol Working Group, if Clahamed would simply agree to 3C meetings in the open, as they have been done for the last 12 years in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I would suggest that by unanimous consent, we send this to council. I am also glad to see this happen. And it is spoken to on the community accord.
Point of order.
Sorry.
A motion has been made and seconded, so you really should call the motion.
We have oh yes, we have had a motion. So
And quite frankly, we did that for the previous one, and it probably hasn't been properly addressed either, because these are actual motions on the floor, so we need to call the question.
I'd like to clarify this with the corporate officer, please, because these kind of decisions should be made in council where
That's why the motion said that it is the committee's recommendation to council.
Oh,
It wasn't
Send
a
it to
council
council.
decision being made to send it to council.
so we are now voting to send this to council. All in favor? Or are you making a comment, Councillor Palm?
I have a problem with this motion with the three names involved, because we had no prior notice that the three names that are now mentioned in this motion would be brought forward here today. And we were certainly not able to give it any thought prior to it coming into the chamber here today. So I am not going to speak in favor of this motion, simply because I believe the mayor should be part of this motion. And sorry?
I want to bring us to order here, please. And we are voting on a motion to send this to council
As far as procedure,
where we can debate,
the two off the cuff,
who the three names will be
well, that should be done at the
by amendment.
council meeting.
And so it shall be. Councillor Palm, all in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Motion carries.